I'm to share this right now.
Yeah. Okay, welcome to Sex Explorers, everybody. We're back with, we're almost done with season 2. Can you believe that, Cami?
I know, we're hitting the halfway mark. We've got 2 more episodes after today, and then we'll take a break for the summer.
Yes, and so the next ones is we have Q&A next week, and which is great because I just got my book. it finally, I was thinking like, oh crap, what if I've got to do stop, what is it called? Dang it. I do this every time. Stop shitting on yourself.
Oh, the You Are Not Broken.
That's a good one. You Are Not Broken. There's something with should within there too, and I can't remember.
The tagline is stop shooting on your sex life.
That's what it is. Stop shitting on your sex life. I'm real excited to read that one. It's only a physical copy. It just came from Amazon, and because it came from Amazon, it's or now I've got 2 weeks. So we've got Q&A next week, and then the week after that we've got the book club. Super excited for it.
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. It'll be summer, so
I know. And then we're gonna take a break, and we'll come back. I think we're planning around September of this year, which is gonna be
I think that's what we've got planned.
Nice. Well, cool. If you're in the Salt Lake area today, I'm giving a presentation over at the Great Saltaire. Maybe they don't call it the Great Saltaire, the Saltaire.
Everything is the Great.
I think it's the Salt Palace. That's what it is. Oh man, there's 2 of them. One of them does raves, and the other one does conferences. And I can't.
That does sound like a good time for me. That's awesome.
So if you're in the Salt Lake area, we've got that presentation going on today. Besides that, Cami, do you have some big things coming up for you?
Oh, we had the Idaho Sexual Health Professionals Conference on Friday, and it went fantastic. It was Idaho's first sexual health conference, and it went really well. And so I spent the weekend recovering from that and looking forward to June. I overbooked myself in May, but I think most of us do.
Yeah, that's fair. That is absolutely fair. Mine wasn't necessarily May. Mine was June. I'm looking at it going, how did that happen? So, well, that's good, Cami. How have you been, by the way? We didn't even get to see how you've been, what you've been up to.
Doing really good. May is, I think, a transition time, right? Like you plan, I don't know, as a professional, I kind of plan my year September to May, just like you do the school year. And so now I'm thinking, okay, we're going to take a break, and then we'll start filling up next September through May with commitments and for teaching and speaking and groups and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yep. I would say I'm in the same boat. My whole schedule explodes around this time with school ending. We need to change, people going on trips. It is a whole new world here. And then we get back in about September, and then it kind of blows up again for the holidays. It seems about twice a year. So
yeah, our industry is not immune to those time periods at all.
No, not at all.
But one of the things I did this month, and I think we're going to do for today, is I've got, this is just a third of a presentation. I've done several places. I've done it for the Treasure Valley Postpartum Summit, and I've done this for a group in West Virginia called Mountain Mamas, where it's a maternal health clinic. And so I thought, I've got this one already developed. Let's talk about postpartum sexual health tips.
Yeah, and I'm at the healing group, and that's the bread and butter of what started the healing group was postpartum depression, anxiety. And then we moved right into what weaves into it, which is sexual health. So I'm excited to talk about it. It's very important. I get these questions all the time from postpartum moms, and in particular, the dads that I work with the group that I run.
That's right, your dad's group. That's exciting. Maybe some of this will help. All right, I'm going to throw up some slides. So if you're listening to this recording on a podcast, just know that the slides are on our YouTube channel if you'd like to watch it that way so that you can see the talking points and things like that. That's our YouTube channel, Sex Explorers. Yes. So, a lot of energy is spent building up to the moment of getting baby here healthy. and it can be a relief. Sometimes it's mixed with grief. But there's not always that thought of, what do I need to know of the transition into adding a family member? How will that impact our sexual life for you and your partner? And so I think some education can be really good. Some things to remember as far as physical changes. I'm going to go through all the different changes we can expect that relate to sexual health, but physical changes you can expect is that healing and discharge of this leftover blood in uterine tissue, it'll stop after about 6 weeks, whether or not you had a vaginal or a cesarean delivery. So some individuals who think, oh, I'll have a C-section, I don't have very little healing to do, you'll have very much a similar experience, whether you're having a vaginal or a cesarean delivery. And intimacy, it's a good idea to learn how to have mutually enjoyable outer course before baby gets here. Because while your OB or your nurse midwife won't tell you to not have, they'll tell you to not have intercourse, but that doesn't mean you can't have an orgasm. That doesn't mean you can't have closeness. That doesn't mean you can't have touch. So reframing the definition of sex before baby gets here so that you can have some success together in the transition can be really helpful. Now, the skin surrounding any incisions, whether you wanted to tear naturally or whether you needed an episiotomy, that will develop scar tissue. And scar tissue is always stiff, and we lose elasticity of tissue. And so when they're telling you to gently massage that scar tissue, that is what will bring back elasticity. So very few moms think about massage for their scars. They just hope it heals, and it will heal, but it will heal stiff. And so the experience will be different once you have that external scar tissue. And you will have a difference in lubrication, because if we took blood from a postpartum mom and we took blood from a perimenopausal woman, the levels would be the same. You are essentially in a perimenopausal state while you transition, while you breastfeed, and while you transition and heal. So the longer you breastfeed, the longer you will be in a basically quote unquote perimenopausal state. So you can expect to have all the same kind of experiences that people talk about in their late 40s, early 50s as they start, because your hormones are doing the exact same thing. And the last tip is, do not play through pain. Do not think that you need to endure the pain so that it won't be less painful next time, or that you just have to re-stretch that tissue. If it's painful, you have begun to damage the tissue. You're not helping the tissue to heal and stretch. You're actually beginning a new form of damage. And it will get in this cycle of hurt, heal, hurt, heal, hurt, heal, which will leave you with not enjoyable sexual experiences, which will decrease your drive. So if you're worried about the wanting of the sex, if you're having painful sex, it's going to hurt your wanting. So if you want to preserve desire, we don't want pain to be an issue here.
No.
So, the US is one of the only countries that doesn't have pelvic floor physical therapy care included for women. Most first world countries, insurance covers, and it's considered standard procedure to send postpartum moms, no matter how the baby got here, to a pelvic floor physical therapist. Because there's been a distortion of the vagina, the perineum. There's going to be heaviness and a dragging sensation into the vagina. There can be pain in the vagina and the perineum. And your entire insides have changed. They're healing. They don't always go back to the way they did. And scar tissue will always change the way we function. And so physical therapy with a pelvic floor therapist is really important. And you can expect, that there will be some incontinence or some bladder incontinence or some leakage, because everything's trying to go back to where it was before baby. And what are your thoughts before I just keep rolling through?
So when I start thinking of this, as I said before, I've got I do a lot with partners,
Yeah.
um, in particular men, but a lot of things that I say here can go for partners of same sex couples as well as dads experience postpartum depression, whether or not it's same sex or heterosexual couple, you
Mhm.
experience postpartum depression, anxiety, these
Mhm.
stressors. And so there's a lot that changed for you, even though you may not have physically had the baby.
Yeah,
And
they've done a lot of research with partners, and they often feel isolated. They feel down. They feel overwhelmed. They feel too much sense of responsibility. They feel like the women, this is all from Gottman research, they feel like the women in the community push them out
yeah.
and make them feel insignificant in the room.
hmm
Yeah, so there is a lot changing for the relationship and for the partner, for sure.
Huge when we're talking about as we're getting into the sexual components, all these physical changes that Cami's been talking about are a part of the female body making change. And then oftentimes there's been so much focus on baby and mom that dads there. I mean, the research on dads is like few and far between.
Mhm.
But the research we do have says that it is super important for infant progress as well as for relational satisfaction for dads to be a part of this. But 1 in 10 men experience significant enough symptoms to be diagnosed with postpartum depression or anxiety. And you're more at risk if your partner has postpartum depression or anxiety within this. So recognize, even though we're talking about the physical side of things, and I'll keep talking about the mental side for partners as we go through this,
Yeah.
the physical side, you may be stepping back and going, well, I didn't tear, I didn't this, I didn't that. There's not a ton I can do about the healing process. And we have the 6 weeks before there's any type of engagement or we start talking about physical
Before
sexual
anything enters
experiences.
the vaginal canal. Yeah.
Yes, and that's actually just the 6 weeks before we have a doctor's visit to see what
Mhm.
options are there. That's not the go ahead.
Mhm.
So don't get those confused. But I would say that there is a big part in this that is mom is healing and baby is engaging. This is your time as a partner to start exploring your ability, whether it's your fifth kid or your first. Start swaddling, supporting, and giving mom a break and making mom essentially leave the house or leave the space.
Mhm.
Like, or you take baby and go somewhere, or you do something so that she can keep doing this healing and also bringing down some of that distress because that can also improve that healing while you also improve your relationship with this new baby. So that's kind of what I would place within this
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you're highlighting this, that this is like the third segment of three. And I usually start with mental health postpartum, and then I do relational health postpartum. And this is part three, which is like sexual health postpartum. I'm hoping to record the entire thing and put it on my website for free for education for new parents. But yes, it's
That's awesome.
intense and it's deep, and it's not just about sexual health, it's also about mental health, postpartum, relational health.
And it
Absolutely.
all affects sexual and physical
It
experiences.
does.
So much.
It
So
does so much. Um, so some things to consider if we're not going to play through the pain. What do we do?
mhm.
We focus on intimacy, like you were saying. We focus on outer course.
Yes.
We use lube, whether or not there's vaginal penetration, because the entire labia, when in a perimenopausal or postpartum state, will be dry. You aren't making the hormones to um, lubricate well during this time. So the role of lube is going to be important even without a course. Starting out really slow. You may want to experiment on your own after you're given the go ahead from your doctor to maybe buy a set of dilators, and as the female, as the uh, vulva owner, experiment with the smallest and then say, oh, that didn't hurt. Move up a size. Oh, that didn't hurt. So that there's this personal confidence of exactly what your body's capable of instead of just rushing right into it. There was some research about women who just rush right into intercourse after baby, and there's so much fear that it will hurt that they tense up, and it does hurt. So
Yes.
alone or together, figure out what kind of girth is still comfortable
Mm-hmm.
before we move into penile penetration.
And if you do experience the pain, I highly recommend don't just go with the dilators by yourself, if especially in those lower ends, because of the risk of developing, say, vaginismus. With the psychological side of vaginismus, work with a pelvic floor therapist where you can actually massage those scar tissue, or like use a method to be able to relax those muscles. That has been such an amazing experience for most of my clients that have worked with me when we bring in that pelvic floor therapist, as you said earlier, Cami, because there's just so much more that can happen there than buying the dilators to get ready for girth. For some it can be helpful, but if you experience any type of side movement, get with someone. It's totally worth their weight in gold.
Yeah, they are. And that is the team approach that most of us want to work with. As sex therapists, we have this ideal of this team approach with the physician, the physical therapist, and the sex therapist all working together.
Yeah.
So there are some really common concerns about resuming intercourse. I want to highlight them and talk about them. These are some quotes from Gottman's research about health after baby. These are some quotes from his research participants. We tried a few times to have sex and just couldn't, like physically couldn't do it because of the pain, which really turned me off for sex for a while. Yeah. The next woman stated, it's scary. It's like you don't want anyone to go down there or touch you because you feel like it's all injured. Right. You can feel like it's a massive blunt injury and it can feel really scary. I will encourage women at this point to become the experts of their body, to get a mirror, to actually look at any incision, to actually look at their tissue, and to become that expert. I'll encourage women, either alone or with their pelvic floor therapist, to do what's called the Q-tip test on themselves, which, if you think about a clock, you'd think of your vulva as a clock with the top, up where your mons pubis is 12 o'clock. And take a little Q-tip and gently touch all around so you're exactly the expert of where your soreness is. And then you can share that with your partner of, we need to avoid from 3 to 6 o'clock. That is really tender right now. So while we're doing outer course, lube will help, but let's avoid that area. That can really be protective of fear and anxiety because you become the expert, and so you become more confident.
Yes.
The second one, I'm still extremely conscious of it, the pain, whenever we have sex, even now. And it's not painful now, but I'm anxious about it. And this is the psychological cycle of pain. Whenever you're talking with people who have chronic pain or autoimmune diseases that create pain, we talk about this cycle of pain where the anticipation of it continues even when the pain is gone. And that develops when we force ourselves to push through the pain. And so we don't even want this cycle to start. We don't want the psychological system to start. So that's why we prioritize mutual pleasure. We don't push through the pain because you will then cause a cycle of anxiety for yourself. Yeah. This fourth quote, I guess I went from having a very healthy sex drive to a very healthy libido and interest in sex to being completely disinterested, completely, no interest, no physical, nothing. So whether that came from headspace or whether that was physical or hormonal thing, I don't actually know. And it's all of them. Mm-hmm. Just as you experience a drop in drive as you enter perimenopause, with the prolactin that you're producing, you're switching all your estrogens, all your hormones, they're completely changing, and it is normal to have a drop in drive. This means everything's going right for you in your body, but it might not mean everything's good. It can hurt the relationship because we're not expecting it. We're not prepared for it. We weren't planning on it.
And that's where I'd add the hard part about the wording within this. I think I understand what they're trying to say. And when they say, I went from having a very healthy libido, mm-hmm. there's a lot of assumptions of what a healthy libido looks like, which
Mhm.
libido for every person is going to look different. And it's hard to say what is healthy and what is not healthy.
Mhm.
So what I'm
Mhm.
hearing there is I went from a libido that I didn't have an issue
Works for
with,
my relationship.
that
Yeah.
worked for me in my relationship, to one where I was completely disinterested. And now I'm feeling distress, or my partner's feeling distress. And oh no, but it's still, your libido is doing what it's supposed to per the research and the hormones and what your body's telling it should do. It's like, well, no, for procreation purposes, we're not going to procreate right now. You just did the thing. Congratulations. Don't have
Yeah.
more sex. It's
Yes.
different in the relational side of things.
From an evolutionary standpoint, it would be a terrible idea to start procreating and making another human right now,
Oh,
right? So,
horrible.
so
Horrible.
that does play into the experience. This fifth quote: "These days, I'm just so tired. I feel like I could go without sex forever." And fatigue is one of the number one things that impacts a female's desire. And I was just reading the other day that adding 1 hour of quality sleep for a woman, they found that it produced the same results in a study as prescribing flibanserin, which is Addyi, which only works for 50% of women as far as the research goes. So sleep is
Wow.
incredible. Sleep is
1
an
hour.
prescription. Yeah.
1 hour.
Extra of quality sleep.
And it beats out Addyi? That's funny.
I think it was the same as Addyi. Yes.
Oh, it does the same as Addyi. Okay, it does the same as
Uh-huh.
that. That's massive, because so many people pitch that medication as a miracle drug, and it can be helpful, but like you said, it's not a miracle drug.
No, for
But an hour of sleep?
Yeah. So as a village, we need to support mom's sleep.
Yes.
In this.
I'm a huge fan, just to pitch, huge fan of setting up, if baby allows, but setting up a way to do shifts, essentially, that it allows for dad and for mom to tag team, someone going to bed a little bit earlier, someone staying up a little bit later, but doing the 4 hours at minimum, so someone can sleep from,
Yeah.
8 to 12, and then the other person takes over shift from 12 to 4 while the other one gets completely uninterrupted sleep. It can do miracles when it
Yes.
comes to the days that you're working on it. So that's just kind of a pitch there of an idea.
And more than an idea, I can put my personal experience behind that. My husband and I didn't figure that out till our third baby, and it was life-changing. It was the most effective thing on my postpartum depression, which I experienced with each of my 4 kids. But moving to that block schedule where each of us got a 6-hour block, but not together at the same time.
Yep.
Sharing responsibilities of baby, that was life-changing for me. And we didn't figure it out till baby number 3. And whenever I'm at like a baby shower and they're like, "What's your advice?" I'm like, "You guys got to do a schedule where you each get 6 hours."
Block it out and follow.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
That's great. I'd love to hear that that's an actual thing you experienced.
No, for me, it was actual.
Cool.
And here we're talking about these expansion of roles, which is normal, that for some women, but not for all, motherhood and sexuality are experienced as contradictory roles. And I've seen that for partners also, that it's difficult to eroticize motherhood. And so they say, "Oh, now that you're breastfeeding, now that you're a mom, it's really hard for me to see your breasts the same way, to see your vulva the same way, to see." They didn't anticipate seeing each other in a long-term relationship play many different roles and still be able to eroticize bodies, even though now you're seeing they have multi-functions instead of just one. I'm going to move through a little bit quicker. I wanted to get to this one. This is the research of Esther Perel. And it's just a really great overview when we're thinking about desire, knowing that there's hormonal issues at play, knowing there's biological issues like sleep, knowing there's a lot changing. What do we have control over as far as our desire? How can we help ourselves? Do we just give up? No, there's some things we can do to help 10, 20, maybe 30%. But these are the things we know diminish desire. Okay, so too much familiarity with our partner. The first time we see them in, a bra and panties or their boxers, it's great. The 100th we see them all day in their underwear walking around the room, we lose the incentive there because it's very familiar. And so too much familiarity will diminish desire. Boredom or emotional disengagement, which can happen during this overwhelming period for both partners. A lack of novelty and variation. They've found that the transition to motherhood is the number one time in a woman's life that is sexually the most frustrating. Busy, stressful lives, and over domestication. This last one is my favorite because we too often think of this as a gendered experience, and it's not gendered at all. When they've done same gender studies, whoever is carrying the load of domestic work experiences a drop in desire. So we've got to stop saying women have a decrease in desire when they're home. No. Anyone who stays and does the most of the domestic work, childcare, house cleaning, meal prep, experience a decrease in desire. So we can't blame women on this. We can't blame men. This is just the experience. It's not a gendered one. So what will maintain desire? Esther Perel teaches us we've got to have communication and intimacy, but we've also got to have some differentiation where we are still our own self, where we still have our own sense of self. And we're honoring our partner's individuality and our partner's honoring our individuality. Validating each other, giving us closeness and space, some seduction, the ability to tolerate aloneness. I think adding a baby can make two people feel alone together.
Absolutely.
And so figuring out how to find each other outside of the family, where instead of just merging into now we're a big family, be like, the two of us are a unit, and the 3 or 4 or 5 of us are a unit, and they both deserve time and attention.
Yes.
Playfulness. Let's see. What else is my favorite on here? Some fantasy, possibly. I have on here, she says, stay out of the bed. But what she means is if your room gets overrun with baby stuff, don't be there. Like create a space that feels adult somewhere in the house that the two of you can go to, which is difficult.
It is, especially when it takes more effort. I think one of the biggest barriers I see when I'm working with parents in this desire discrepancy is in order to engage more, you need time, and time is of the essence. It doesn't.
It's limited.
Oftentimes,
It's a limited resource.
Yeah, it's very limited. You're trying to sleep, which you probably aren't getting a ton of. You've got work. You've got family life. You may have other kids. You've got domestic experiences around the house, plus meals. And for a lot of the female-bodied individuals, we're talking about having your body constantly touched. And so the thought of like, let's touch more. Sometimes the greatest thing you can do is touch less so that you can engage differently, such as giving time away when you're talking differentiation, having a partner be able to take a bath while the other one is taking care of other things that need to be done. And we work through that mindfulness to get into a space of, I am a partner. I am a woman. I am a being beyond mother. And those things can be helpful, but it takes planning and time, and it is not easy to do, especially for not being intentional, just like that, staying out of the bed.
Yeah. And if I gave any advice to people who are making choices in this transition of what to say no to and what to say yes to, I would encourage them to put their energy towards saying no to domestic issues, but still saying yes to individual hobbies. So instead of saying, well, I'm not going to go to bunco anymore, I'm going to drop my poker night. We need to keep those. If they're individual, we need to say, how can I outsource some of the laundry? How can I outsource? Can we do delivery for our groceries for a month or two? That we say no to the things that are domestic and we outsource those because that impacts our desire. But we keep saying yes to things that are individual interests and hobbies because that will actually feed the desire.
And
So knowing why you're saying yes to something and why you're saying no to something.
And I would say take a breath when you think of selfishness. That one comes up all the time. I can't tell you how often the biggest worry is I can't do that. That would be selfish for partners and for mothers, because it is, well, if I do that, that would leave this person home, or I'm too nervous about that, or I'm not sure, or I'd be taking time for myself. We need to start making that village around you, meaning you can leave and the village is going to take care of the things so you can relax and come back a better partner, a better mother. That's the goal of those things. Not, you don't get to do that for the next 5 years because you decided to have a baby. Don't fall into that pitfall.
And the village can be services. It doesn't have to be people. Sometimes people feel really lonely. Everyone around them works or whatever. But the village can also have services. I know there's a service called Launder that will do your laundry for. I mean, you might do that for a week or 2 or 3. Meal delivery, or I know a lot of people will deliver meals once a month pre-cooked that you keep in your fridge. Not, I mean, there are like large national companies, but there are also a lot of home cooks that are doing this service now for families, things like that. So look around, what does your community provide as services, as well as who are the people in your neighborhood that would love to step in and help.
Absolutely.
And again, remind yourself when there's a change in your desire, like Braxton said, not from healthy to unhealthy, but when there's a change from something that worked to something that isn't currently working, to remind ourselves of that dual control model and our accelerators and our brakes, and knowing that those will change with our life experience. So if you felt like, oh, I'm an expert in my sexual self at 20, that will be different at 25 and 30 and 35, because our roles change, our personalities evolve, our skills develop. So being open to this idea that it's a living idea, it's not set in stone. And once a baby comes, you're going to have a new set of brakes or accelerators that you were unaware of.
Very much so.
And I see this happen where when a new role becomes overwhelming or all-consuming, we forget about all the other parts of ourselves. And to keep this idea that what's being shown on the screen is this pie, all having equal parts: our social self, our sexual self, our spiritual self, our relationship self, our roles and responsibilities, that they all deserve our time and attention. And often the transition to motherhood, that becomes all encompassing and everything else shrinks to nothing. And it takes a couple to be intentional about maintaining in balance these parts of ourselves. So, those are my suggestions sexually for postpartum sexual health, things to think about, things to be prepared for, so you're not blindsided. Be like, well, we can expect my desire to change. We can expect to move to outer course instead of inner course. Let's perfect that before it happens. Be prepared for all these changes instead of thinking that it's something going wrong. It's something going right.
Yes.
These are the things your body has to do to go from a baby making machine to a baby feeding machine to now an individual again.
Yes.
And these sexual changes are a part of what's going right, even though it might be difficult on you personally and on the relationship. So as prepared for that change as you can be is great.
I often think of this as we've gone through this many times before. This just looks different. So each person, like right now, we're in graduation season. We have a whole new flood of 18-plus-year-olds that are entering the workforce. And even if it's not necessarily the workforce, they are entering adulthood. And this is a big change. This is a really big change for those individuals. And so remember back when you did that, a transition in puberty, a transition into adulthood, a transition into your 20s, and maybe even into like, oh, this is college, or this is career, or this is, now we've got motherhood. Now we've got, I'm deciding to do this thing or that. Because they're expected and typically supported, not all the time, but typically that way. If we can look at them in these ways, you had to adjust your life. These new high schoolers are now going into the adult world, and identifying, do I have a place to live? Where do I live here? This is stressful. This is that. And it's going to shift that pie. I really like that pie that you were talking about, where someone's learning about themselves. If you can take this on and go, let's get mental health support, let's get pelvic floor support so we can address those as they come in. You can also start addressing, where is my intimacy, my sexuality, my motherhood role, my fatherhood role? What are these things and these changes? And if we can take them in stride, there's a lot of discovery and exploration we can do, versus the stress of saying, I had this change and I need to get back to where I was. Some things are not going back there. We've just had a new human in our life, and no matter what happens, even in the morbid side of, if that child is no longer in your life afterwards, that only creates another life change. It doesn't go back to where it was. And that's important to remember.
Right. Sometimes we grieve the different stages we've gone to together.
Yes.
Before we build something that's also good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are some things to think about that I didn't get any of this education from my OBGYN. A lot of this I didn't learn till baby number 3 or baby number 4. And I think it's important that we have this education available to help make the transition easier.
100%. I completely agree. And I think that this is just a new part of the last 10 to 15 years where we've started recognizing, oh, wow, well, we need to get this information out for these moms. In all honesty, as a partner to be and a father to be, or a thought of like, oh, I'll have kids one day. You just had kids and then you continue. And I think that there's a level of expectation that you can just have kids and everyone plays it off super well. And no one talks so much about the distress that happens. And it's just recent, within, the last 30 or 40 years, that it's been like, oh, we need community. We need more of this, bringing it back, versus being in a space where it's like, well, you just go through it. Mom, just deal with it. Dad, just get things done. And addressing and making changes, I think, is starting to hit mainstream a lot better. And I'm excited for that. But know that
that silence created secrecy about our struggle.
Yes.
And so since we've removed that and said, no, we can talk about this, we've removed the shame, then women are actually saying, here's what my experiences are. Here's what was difficult. What would have made it better? And then there's this boom in maternal health information that was, filled a vacuum. My mother didn't have this information.
No.
So I didn't have it. So, yeah. So those are just some tips that, part of a presentation I've done several times, that I think the full thing will be up on my website soon. If anybody wants it, it'll be free.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, great work, Cami. I like that. I don't know that people see just how important the postpartum side of things is. In fact, with the podcast, I've interviewed people a lot on postpartum depression, anxiety, fatherhood, planning, and getting ready for this. And those are probably the least viewed and watched of all of my episodes. Yeah. And I don't know if that's just because it's like, they came for sexual health and thought that I was going to give them tips and tricks on how to have sex. But this plays a big role in it. And I think it's been a little telling on my end to see what the engagement versus how the other episodes fare, that it kind of shows that I think that there's still a lot of belief that this is just something that doesn't necessarily need to happen until someone gets thrown into the thick of it and it's like, oh, wow. And then they usually end up coming back with, what's wrong with me? I shouldn't be in this spot. And we need that to change. So I'm glad we're talking about it. I think it's a great subject you're bringing up.
Yeah. Thank you. It's important. Thanks for having this conversation with me.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Out loud on Monday mornings. It's great to have these discussions with another professional. It's fun. Always good, Cami. I love having you in here, and that we get to talk about these really, life-changing experiences. Yeah. Life-changing. Well, again, you can reach us at sexplorespodcast@gmail.com. Is that right, Cami? Yeah. Send us some questions, because tomorrow or next week we're going to do some Q&A from our listeners. And we go live with them. So if you have any question,
about sexual health, make sure to send them to us. Feel free to reach out to us individually on our platforms. If not, continue exploring, everybody. This is not just a one-time deal. Let's do it.
Thanks so much. Hope you have a great day.
Yeah, you too, Cami. And I'll see you next week, and we'll see y'all next week.